The GOAT debate for the NBA and all-time rankings debates have just grown more and more tiresome for me over the years. I made a whole long-ass documentary in my teenage years going over the subject, and since then I've pretty much put it to bed, at least as much as is possible in this space. But a conversation that's more interesting to me is who had the best peak. When it comes to all-time conversations, longevity, resume, the context of teammates, context of era and competition, all of that muddies the waters and makes a discussion as far from objective as possible. At the end of the day, it comes down to what you value the most, and for me, the most important thing is peak. What did your ability as a basketball player peak at? So in today's video, I wanted to discuss the greatest peaks in NBA history. Now, I don't at all expect to come away with like a definitive individual, probably a few names that'll be on a similar level, but to be clear, how good you were at your best is the only discussion being had today. I don't want to hear shit about rings or MVPs. We are talking strictly basketball ability here. So without further ado, who had the greatest peak in NBA history? Let's discuss. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like. Trying to hit 150k subs over here, so that subscription would be much appreciated. Also check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio only experience. So first things first, I want to name a few candidates for this award, and it will be primarily top 15 to 20 players of all time. Though all of the other stuff that influences all-time rankings is off of the table, there generally is a correlation between peak ability and all-time rankings. I'm also going to pick a single individual season for each player, as it makes this a lot simpler. And the individual season includes their playoff performance. The result, whether it's a championship or not, is irrelevant for the most part. But what they actually did, how they performed individually, matters a lot. The following players I think have a case for the best peak in NBA history. 1967 Wilt Chamberlain, 1972 Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 1982 Moses Malone, 1985 Larry Bird, 1987 Magic Johnson, 1993 Michael Jordan, honorable mention to 1988, 1995 Hakeem Olajuwon, 2000 Shaq, 2003 Tim Duncan, 2004 Kevin Garnett, 2006 Dwayne Wade with an honorable mention to 2009, 2008 Kobe, 2014 Kevin Durant, 2013 LeBron James, honorable mention to 2018, 2016 Steph Curry, honorable mention to 2021, 2018 James Harden, honorable mention to 2017 and 19, and 2019 Kawhi Leonard, 2024 Luka Doncic, 2025 Nikola Jokic, and 2025 Giannis with an honorable mention to 2020. Now, I am sure that some of those specific years that I selected will be a bit controversial, so I will explain why I picked those years as I go by each player. I've also grouped these players into batches based on their era, so we'll go one by one and pick out the best from each group, and then I guess I'll do kind of a bracket thing to determine the ultimate winners. I don't know. So let's start off in ye olden times, back in the dark ages of basketball, as it were. Our representation for the 60s and 70s is Wilt and Kareem. Shout out Bill Russell, but I don't believe he peaked higher than those guys did. 67 Wilt has been a fixation of mine for a long time. I'm personally of the opinion that the story of how he became a more effective winner is one of the most important case studies in NBA history. Wilt before 1967 averaged 39.6 points and 3.4 assists on 31.4 field goal attempts per game, as well as 13.6 free throw attempts. As crazy as that point per game average is, his teams never won as much as even 50 games up until he went to the Philadelphia 76ers, and they were consistently middle to even below average offenses. But then in 67, he reduced his field goal attempt average from 25.2 to just 14.2. As a result, he averaged just 24 points per game, but on a ridiculous 68% shooting. Bro had a 64% true shooting percentage in the fucking 60s. He also increased his assist average to 7.8, a stark contrast to his 3.4 career average up until that point. And Philly was by far the #1 offense in the NBA, and he went from having 4 teammates average double digits, and he went from having 4 teammates averaging double digits to 6. He then went on to beat Wilt Celtics, the only time anyone beat them in the 60s period. I simultaneously feel that Wilt is overrated because of his early career stats, but I feel like this version of Wilt is severely underrated. And between him and Kareem, I lean towards him because Kareem had significant drops in his box score stats when the playoffs came around. The peak year I chose for him was 72 because he averaged 35 and 16, but when the playoffs come around, his points per game dropped to 28.7, and if you think I should have picked 1971, well, the same thing happens. It's like a 4 or 5 point per game dip. So Wilt remains on the board, Kareem is off. Then we jump to the 80s. Moses Malone I'm going to go ahead and eliminate because he was a notoriously bad playmaker. He averaged twice as many turnovers as he did assists, and he is also not a particularly special defensive player. His peak numbers of 31 and 15 with 7 offensive boards a game does really seem appealing, but when you watch the man's highlights, he suffered from a case of Andre Drummond-itis, at least a little bit. Obviously, he was better than Andre Drummond. The shit that people meme on Angel Reese for, Moses Malone was low-key doing that a little bit. So many of those offensive boards were him following his own miss, which is fine. I just think it puts him a step below Magic and Bird. In the case of Magic, he has the direct advantage of being the best all time at something, and that is, of course, his playmaking ability. Please go and watch what this guy was doing at his peak as a playmaker, whether it is a full game or just the highlights. It is genuinely mind-bending shit, and I don't think anyone has ever come close to dominating the game with the pass in the way that Magic has. As a result, his offensive punch is so significant that to me it trumps how mid of a defender he was, especially later in his career. In 1987, he was also scoring at a damn high volume, especially for him, as well as the usual league-leading 12 assists per game, and he was overall 10th in scoring that season, and the leading scorer on the Lakers, as Worthy that year averaged 19, and Kareem and Byron Scott both averaged 17. Naturally, LA was the #1 offense in the league, and Magic won his first MVP, and he eventually led them to the championship, beating Bird's Celtics in 6 games. And speaking of Bird, I think he can get overrated as a shooter by people. Like, don't even get me fucking started on people who want to call him an all-time three-point shooter based on some fucking three-point contests. But I think his all-around game gets pretty underrated. First of all, he scored with a lot more than just his jumper, and he was also a great passer in his own right, obviously nowhere near Magic, but still very good, especially for his position, and he was a really strong rebounder. He's also a considerably better defender than Magic. He can't compete with Magic's assist totals, but he peaks higher as a scorer and a rebounder and a defender. Now, in 1985, Bird averaged 28.7 points, 10 rebounds, and 6.6 assists on 52, 43, 88 splits, but for me, Magic's playmaking is just so magical that I personally think his peak is just a smidge higher. So we're going to be eliminating Malone and Bird here. Now on with the 90s, where we have 93 Jordan and 95 Hakeem. I would love to give Hakeem his flowers. He has a case for being the best two-way player in NBA history. I specifically chose 95 because his stats for that championship run are absolutely bonkers. However, it's Mike, dude. Like, it's just Mike, it is him, and I chose 93 specifically because I think this is the best balance between Mike as a winner while also having crazy high scoring volume. In 93, he averaged 35.1 points per game in the playoffs, which I'm fairly confident is the highest point per game average out of a lead option on a title team ever. To put that into perspective, the Bulls averaged 102 points per game in that title run, meaning the guy is scoring over a third of their points while also grabbing 7 rebounds, dropping 6 dimes, and putting up 3 stocks. He averaged fucking 41 against the Suns in the finals. Like, what the hell? So 93 Jordan advances. For the 2000s, I broke it up into the guards versus the bigs. 2000 Shaq, '04 Garnett, and '03 Duncan. To be honest, this is the most stacked group we've got because I think all three of these guys are pretty close and all three of them represent some of the best peaks ever. Shaq kind of speaks for himself. I mean, literally, he loves to talk. That, or he throws a bucket of shit on your head. But 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 3 blocks. Like, I generally attest that Shaq was better on the Magic, but if you have to choose a single year, a peak year, then you gotta go with this one. This was before he really put on too much weight. He's still putting up 3 blocks per game. He's not in the same shape as his Magic days, but he still had the gazelle in the open floor factor that I think was woefully underutilized. 2004 Garnett is one of my favorite players of all time. I love everything from his play style to his energy to the aesthetics of his game. He had one of the best mid-range seasons out of a big man in NBA history. He was an incredible playmaker and ball handler for a power forward. Like, dude basically was a 7-foot shooting guard, which is very ahead of his time. And he was a beast of a defensive player. My personal pick for the top 3 defensive players in NBA history are Duncan, Garnett, and Hakeem. He was truly like that as a defender, but I gotta cut him because he's not Shaq. And 2003 Duncan was on another level. I did a video looking at '03 Duncan at length over on Little Rusty Bucket, so by all means, if you want to get a more in-depth look at it, go watch that. But to make it super simple, Duncan got by the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, a 60-win Mavericks team in the conference finals, though Dirk did miss half of that series, so it's not that impressive. And the Nets, who in my opinion get a little bit underrated just because of how bad the East was in the 2000s. That was actually a very good team. But Kobe and Shaq was the real barrier, and against the Lakers, he averaged 28, 12, and 5 while guarding Shaq for much of the series. For the entirety of the 2003 playoffs, he averaged 24.7 points, 15.4 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 3.3 blocks. He led his team in every category besides for steals, and his best offensive teammates, Tony Parker and Steven Jackson, averaged 14.7 and 12.8, both while barely shooting over 40% from the field. By my money, this is the most impressive carry job title in NBA history, and as a result, I don't feel like I can cut him. Like, I feel like that would be premature just because he's in this grouping. So in this case, I'm going to allow both Duncan and Shaq to advance to the final group. Next up, we have the 2000s guards in Kobe and Dwayne Wade. Now, in the case of Kobe, I chose 2008 because I think this is the most balanced version of Kobe. It's actually a similar reason for what I said about MJ. I strongly disagree with the insinuation that he peaked in 2006 just because he averaged 35. I think people way too often, when they're looking for what a player's peak is, they just sort by the highest points per game and that's the answer. No, he was averaging 35 because he didn't change his mentality to a more winning mindset. People attribute this to Pau joining the team. No, that is revisionist history. Pau played his first game for the Lakers on February 5th, 2008. Before that, the Lakers went 30-16 while Kobe was averaging 28 points per game. This is yet another example of the Wilt paradox. Too much scoring works its way around to actually hurting the team. 30-16 is a 65% win percentage, which would give them a 53-win pace. The only major addition to the Lakers between this and his 2 years of shot chucking was Derek Fisher. That's literally the only addition. This was also the perfect intersection between Kobe's athleticism and his skill. I debated picking 2013 Kobe because he did go kind of crazy that year, but he was also 34, so nowhere near the athlete that he was. So I do think that 2008 is peak Kobe. But anyways, how does that compare to '06 Wade? Well, here we have a case of two of my favorite players ever going up against each other, so this is a difficult thing for me. But this is going to be controversial, but I want to be honest about how I feel. This is ultimately my list. I lean towards Dwayne Wade here. I kind of feel like Wade had a slightly better peak than Kobe's best in '06. Wade was always a better playmaker. He entered the league as a point guard. Honestly, he would have been a full-time point if he was drafted today. And as scoring goes, Kobe has never had the most ideal game in terms of efficiency. That's not to say that Kobe was inefficient. That is just an incorrect assessment that is wildly over-accepted. His true shooting percentage in the 2000s was 55.9%. The average true shooting percentage in that era was 53%. He wasn't just not inefficient, he was efficient. Wade, and we're talking about peak, so it's also like from a game-to-game basis what matters the most. Wade got to the rim a good bit more. He's a worse shooter, especially from three, but his ability to get to the rim at will makes up for how jump shot reliant Kobe is by contrast. Comparing these peak years, Kobe took 24% of his shots from 0 to 3 feet, while Wade took 38% of his shots from there. He also took 7% more of his shots from floater range. He also got to the line a little bit more as a result. He broke down the defense and created opportunities for his teammates more as a result. I am a big believer in that the more easy offense you can generate, the better offensive player you are. And in the case of Wade, he had a more accessible, easy scoring for himself, and he was a better playmaker and a pretty even defensive talent. And while his mid-range stats in the regular season of 2006 were pretty underwhelming, he did take a notable jump in percentage in the playoffs to where he was a pretty damn good mid-range shooter. And that's where we get to the final point. A championship run with this degree of carrying is, to me, the single most valuable thing you can do for your legacy and all-time ranking, but also as direct evidence of your level of talent. Obviously, if this was an all-time ranking, I'm picking Kobe, and it's not even a thought. It's not even a conversation. Just peak for peak, just both of them at their absolute best, I'm gonna go with Dwayne Wade. Oh man, I'm gonna get shot. Don't give me shit for that. It's gonna be controversial, I'm sure, but I don't know. Maybe I've been told that I overrate Dwayne Wade in the past. Maybe this is just something that I think too highly of him, but I don't know. I really think Dwayne Wade at his absolute best is like that. His absolute best was just not very long. Now that we're into the 2010s, I'm going to try and make this quick. Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph are the three best players of the 2010s, and I can make that easy by just picking LeBron. I think 2013 is his peak because he was a better defensive player and a higher volume driver than he was in 2018, but you can't go wrong with either pick. Steph had maybe the greatest offensive peak ever, certainly the greatest offensive peak out of a guard, but he's a mid defender. And in the case of Kevin Durant, he doesn't have enough of an all-around game to pair with his absurd scoring ability, so KD and Steph are going to get cut. Now, between Harden and Kawhi, Harden did have the better regular season, but when the postseason comes into play and we consider which play styles are more conducive to winning, I gotta go with Kawhi. I actually picked 2018 for Harden because it's a nice mix of his volume as a scorer and playmaker without getting super excessive. But even still, I think peak Harden always had too high of a usage rate. I will take the two-way guy who doesn't need the ball constantly to dominate any day of the week. I actually made a video in 2019 about the differences between Kawhi's game and James Harden and why that went such a long way in determining the outcomes of that playoff run. Like, yeah, James Harden, a lot of flaws in his approach that led to those crazy bombastic stats. So he beats Kawhi in the stat department, but I think Kawhi was just a more winning player. Frankly, I think 2019 Kawhi and just what Kawhi generally was at his absolute best is one of the best peaks in NBA history, period. I guess it is on the list, so it does make sense, but it's really, really good. That brings us to the 2020s, and I can comfortably eliminate 2024 Luka for the same reasons that I eliminated Harden. Now, he should have won MVP that year, but he does not hold a candle to the peaks of Jokic and Giannis. And yes, I do believe that their peaks were last year. Obviously, these guys both have MVP seasons to pick from, but I think last year was the most complete versions of them as players. Giannis added a legit mid-range shot and reduced his three-point volume to virtually nothing. I don't know what the hell was wrong with Giannis in 2020. Why are you taking nearly 5 threes a game when you're really bad at them? In the case of Jokic, last year he averaged just short of 30, while also putting up 13 rebounds and 10 assists on 57, 42, 80 splits, while taking a career high in threes per game at 4.7. Like, dude, he was a machine last year. And I think he has an argument for the greatest offensive peak of all time. And I'd actually give him the edge over Steph just because of his unstoppability factor. He is one of the best scorers in NBA history and one of the best playmakers in NBA history. And he's also not a bad defender. That is vastly overblown. In his 2023 run, he fucking led the playoffs in rebounds, assists, and points. Like, he's also a great rebounder. So personally, I will go with Jokic. This is a hell of a top 3 for the era, though. And honestly, the more I pondered that, the more excited I am for what the rest of this decade is going to look like. Basketball-wise, I am excited for the basketball of the next 4 years. But that leaves us with the list of 9 players. 67 Wilt, 87 Magic, 93 Jordan, 2000 Shaq, 2003 Duncan, 2006 Wade, 2013 LeBron, 2019 Kawhi, and 2025 Jokic. And on that list, I think we can cut Wade, Kawhi, and Wilt. I just don't think they're quite on the level of the rest of the names on this list. So our top 6 is 87 Magic, 93 Jordan, 2000 Shaq, 2003 Duncan, 2013 LeBron, and 2025 Jokic. And honestly, from there, I'm finding it hard to call it. Like, if you want to make cuts, I guess I'll cut 2 more players, and that will be Magic and Jokic, just because they are too limited to one side of the ball. Like I said, I think Jokic's issues on defense are overblown, but they do exist, and he's definitely not a great defender. Everybody else on this list is a great defender. In conclusion, to me, the 4 greatest peaks in NBA history are 1993 Michael Jordan, 2013 LeBron, 2000 Shaq, and 2003 Tim Duncan. Something about the year 3. Well, we don't really have anything from 2023. I mean, Jokic was great, don't get me wrong, but not quite on the level of LeBron, Duncan, and Wade every 10 years. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, seriously, kids, children, the people younger than me, or even the people older than me who are just ignorant, like, look into 2003 Duncan. You have no idea how good that guy was. Like, the notion that he was like carried by the Spurs franchise and he just had phenomenal teammates around him all the time, so dramatically overblown. What he did in 2003, it's just ridiculous. So let me know your pick for the greatest peak in NBA history. Let me know if I snubbed anybody, and try and keep the conversation friendly, because there's a lot of information in here, and even this is subjective. I didn't mean to imply with the intro, peak is also not subjective. It is. It's just less so than everything else. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.